I came back from a run, and there were 2 sheriff cruisers idling at the end of my gravel drive. The HOA president standing there with a folder like a weapon, her son pacing like a bottle of soda about to blow. And before I could even set my keys down, the deputy said, "They had a report." I threatened a neighbor, I laughed, not because it was funny, but because if you knew what actually sits under the floorboards of my quiet life, you'd laugh too. My name's Alex Mercer. Folks around Pine Hollow think I'm a camera systems contractor close enough on paper. In reality, this cabin my aunt left me is a post with a purpose. And that morning I understood something simple and ugly. Saying no to the wrong people can make you the villain faster than any crime ever could. The kid who started it all rolled up at sunrise with a trailer of gear and a head stuffed full of dreams. Brandon Hale, 22. Sunburned, shaking hands, talking fast about underwater archaeology and sponsorship contracts, and how my dock specifically. My dock was the only place on the lake with the depth he needed. He kept chopping his own deadlines from 30 days to 3 while he begged. And then he said the line that made the hair on my neck stand up. I made promises to people who don't like excuses. I told him no politely, because this cabin is the last gift from the only person who ever believed I'd amount to more than a screw-up. Not for sale, not for rent. Definitely not a set for treasure hunting videos. And that's when the black SUV rolled in, and his mother stepped out in a blazer. Like court was in session. Patricia Hale, HOA president, former attorney, current queen of this cul-de-sac kingdom. She smiled and said, "We needed to reach a mutually beneficial arrangement," which is a phrase that lives right next door to extortion. If you've ever worked a badge, I stayed on the porch where the angles are clean and the audio is good, and told her nothing was happening. She glanced at my cameras, my wiring. The way the gate clears the gravel by a ½ inch, and when she left, she kept the smile, but sharpened the promise. "We value community standards, Mr. Mercer." 2 nights later, I heard bushes whisper. A lens blinked near my window. Then everything scuffled, and a phone lit up face down on my driveway like a dropped flare. Should have tossed it back, I'd be the bigger man, but a text banner slid across the lock screen, and my stomach fell through the floor. Verratti, then Klein, then Velez. Names with red string on my board. Names. You don't want to owe a nickel. I put the phone on a Faraday mat, watched the notifications pile up like debt, and called the sheriff myself. Deputy Chief Roy Dalton came out decent man. Asked questions, looked at the footage. And right when we were winding down, Patricia arrived with a scripted speech and a threat to press theft charges. Roy asked Brandon to tell his story. The kid started with landscapes and ended with conspiracies. Government plates at weird hours. Targets, operations. Things only a guilty imagination or an accurate one notices. Then he slipped, "I owe people. I mean, a guy like him might owe." And the deputy raised his eyes. The slow way a sun rises. Who owes who, son? And Brandon said the names out loud, like he was dropping rocks in a well. Roy closed his notebook, warned Patricia about false reports, told Brandon to stay off my property, then pulled me aside and said, "Whatever you are, be careful. Those folks don't just break contracts." You know what I mean. The drone came next, bargain model with a decent camera. Brandon launched it from public ramp and sent it at my roof like a wasp. That thought it was a hawk, my countermeasures hummed the thing. Hit an invisible wall. Spun, panicked, and thunked into my yard. Half the neighborhood watched it fall. Owen Reed from the marina gave me that look. Men give when they see their old life poking through yours. Patricia threatened FCC complaints. Brandon yelled about illegal jamming. I logged the memory card, kept my face boring, and waited for the next move. 3 days later, the county inspector arrived to investigate a hotline complaint about my dock. I poured him coffee and let him measure bolts. Like a man measuring his patience, he shook his head and said this deck could handle a hurricane and a wedding reception on the same afternoon. While he worked, calls rolled in around the lake about loose cleats and stubborn engines and wires that magically unhooked themselves. Owen found. Brandon crouched behind a pontoon with a wrench and that wild look, and he gathered evidence with the calm of a teacher during a fire drill. Photos, statements, timestamps, and words most civilians never use. Maritime safety, federal jurisdiction, navigable waters. That's when I started wondering who exactly he used to be before he was a man with a toolbox. Patterns announce themselves. If you let them, every boat and dock Brandon sabotaged belonged to short-term rentals that were always too busy with guests who didn't fish and never learned the neighbors' names. My wall map had those places lit up like hot coals, and in his frantic attempt to punish me, he drew a highlighter circle around. Exactly the properties that mattered most funny on paper, terrifying in real life. The day I almost broke my oath was a bright Wednesday that went sideways in a single breath. I was throwing potting soil into my truck when I heard voices harden across the lot, 2 men in expensive casual. Had Brandon and Patricia backed against their car. Posture, said. Training jackets. Said weapons, we said 30 days. Mrs. Hale, it's day 30, mister. Virati does not enjoy broken promises. Brandon tried to hold his voice steady and failed. We have a plan, the man leaned close and said. Then give it lungs, 72 hours. I didn't have authority to mount a full response, and I didn't have the luxury to look away. So I did the oldest lawful thing, an anonymous tip with surgical detail. Deputy Dalton arrived with 2 units like an angel carrying a clipboard. IDs, please, he said, and the consultants tried to spray charm like cologne. Didn't work after they left. Patricia thanked me with tears, and then immediately tried to leverage me. You clearly have connections. If you'd just sell or lease, we could all. I looked at her and saw a mother inside a maze every turn. Walled off, except the one where I solve her problem. Hard truth desperation makes smart people do stupid things. 2 mornings later, men who were done being patient grabbed Brandon at gunpoint from his own driveway, hauled him to the public dock, and gave Patricia a deadline. 50,000 2 hours. No police. I watched terror rearrange a mother's face, and I opened the black case under my stairwell, called the only person who outranked my fear. Lena Brooks. If you reveal, she said, we lose years of work. If I don't, I said, we lose a kid. Silence. Then move. We're 15 minutes out. What happened next looked like television. 2 people who don't know the weight of it. Black SUVs, long guns, radios that only talk when it matters. I walked down the dock with my palms open, and the talkative gunman did not like surprises. Neither did his trigger finger. And that's when Lena made the choice for all of us. This is Agent Brooks with the FBI. You are surrounded on land and water. Put the weapons down, or your next address has very small windows. Brandon sobbed as they set him down. Patricia folded over him and whispered thank you, until it turned into one word. The men placed their guns on the boards like they suddenly remembered church, and the whole lake learned the truth. In one breath. Yeah, that happened. That night, we held the strangest neighborhood meeting you can imagine. Lena laid it out plain for 6 months. Money had been swimming instead of walking. Ghost bookings, boats carrying coolers that didn't sweat, shell companies buy and flip, lake houses with suspicious timing. 56 million washed through this water. In 3 years, most of you saw it and didn't know you were seeing it. Owen stood up and finally showed a badge, Special Agent Coast Guard Investigative Service, which explained the toolbox, explained the vocabulary, explained why he always seemed to be where the trouble started and ended. At dawn, they knocked on 24 doors. Lena's teams moved like an orchestra cutters. At the river mouth, sheriff units on the county roads. State police playing blocker. Verratti was hauled wet and furious out of a bass boat, with 2 million shrink-wrapped under the floor. Hard to look important in a life jacket and handcuffs. Neighbors watched from porches. Some cried, some filmed, some just counted. Unmarked SUVs and exhaled. Jennifer from across the cove realized her kids had been riding bikes past a counting house. Bob down the lane sold his footage to a station. He swears he doesn't watch. And when the sun got high, Lena came by with coffee and a grin. You only earn at the end of a marathon, he should have. Seized assets north of 50 million, charges for 47 people, and your neighbor's obsession. She nodded toward Brandon as Exhibit A to Z. Brandon didn't go away forever. He went to a hospital first, a courtroom later, a program after that. Bipolar is a bully you can't see. He got treatment. He helps at the Veterans Center, now setting up computers and listening to stories that teach patience. Patricia lost her license, pled out, works at the grocery store, and counts the price of pride one shift at a time. Sometimes I see her, and we nod like two people who survived the same storm from different boats. 6 months passed, and Pine Hollow remembered how to be a town rental smell, like sunscreen. Instead of stress, the HOA elected Owen. And the first thing he said was, "Let's be a neighborhood." Before we're anything else. Property values climbed, the news trucks left peace. Has a sound if you listen. It's quieter than money. But it lingers. I wish I could say that's the end. Then a new family moved into Patricia's old place. Mother with sharp elbows. Son with a camera. And hunger I recognized on day 3. They asked why a simple contractor needs that much security on day 4. A toy drone wobbled over my bay, and the kids saluted. When it hiccuped on day 5. Bob texted me a video of the mother at the county office asking for my permits on day 6. David knocked with a typed page titled, "Community Watch Notes." On day 7, Owen said, "Not with a badge, with a barbecue. We filled the pavilion, fed them ribs, told lake stories, watched their eyes, while they chewed people. Reveal themselves. When their hands are full and their mouths are honest, do I think lightning strikes twice. I think money has gravity and people follow it. But I also think this place knows how to hold a line now. Here's the part I never said out loud. I was always the quiet one, underestimated the guy who fixes things in the background. And turns out the background is where the real levers live. When the HOA gavel swung, when the lens pressed my window, when the guns showed up at the dock, they expected me to fold. Instead, I held, not because I'm special, because if nobody holds, we all slide. You know what I mean. So tell me this in the comments. Who was right and who was wrong in this mess? Where do you draw the line between a mother fighting for her kid and a neighbor protecting his home? Have you seen power used like a cudgel? Have you ever been the quiet one who finally had to speak up? Drop your take, push back. If you disagree, and if you want the chapter about the new family, and whether lightning really can strike twice on the same street, say it. I'll show you what justice sounds like when it lives next door.